Well, as I said at the top, President Biden's radical climate agenda equals big government socialism. That's how they're trying to do it. Here to talk about it is Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor, and author of, you guessed it, Defeating Big Government Socialism. And Newt, I always give you credit for the phrase because it's such a fabulous phrase. And I just, we have lots to talk about, but really, as we talked on the radio a bit this weekend, this whole radical climate activism, et cetera, which the Wall Street Journal teed off on today in a terrific editorial, but the heart of this is socialism. This is central planning, regulatory planning. There's no free choice. There's no free markets. There's, nothing going on here except government planning, and that is big government socialism, is it not?
Sure. I mean, what you have is the academic class has found a device to give them power over everybody else. And so the environment, in a very real sense, is an excuse. That's not their goal. Their goal is controlling your life. That's just their excuse to create the hysteria to make you think there is no choice. The fact that, frankly, their arguments both about the environment and about how to fix things are both wrong, I think is a key part of why I wrote Defeating Big Government Socialism. But this is a long-term, very deep effort by the elites to take control of the society, force the rest of us to do what they want on their terms, and basically reduce us from being citizens, which is what the Declaration of Independence gave us, to just being subjects, with them being in charge.
Yeah, whatever happened, right, to our creator being number one, bestowing powers to us, the citizens, as you say, with the unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and then the government works for us. Somehow the Bidens got that out of order, it seems to me.
Yeah, and it's not just, this has been growing at least since Lyndon Johnson's Great Society. It's gotten worse and worse. It's like a cancer that metastasizes. Today you have people at every level of the federal government, and frankly, in some of the blue states, New York, Illinois, California, you have power-hungry politicians and power-hungry bureaucrats allied together to try to control all the rest of us. In the end, it won't work because we're Americans, and I think we reject that kind of approach.
And I see it also, it is a war or a jihad against free market capitalism. I think that's very much a part of this.
Absolutely. Remember, free market capitalism means you have freedom, means you have private property. Private property is a bulwark of freedom. That's not what they want. They want you to be subordinated to them, to do what they tell you to do. Look at the whole fight over masks. Look at the damage we've done to children in this country because we've tolerated government doing things that were just plain wrong, but that were driven by these elites who thought they would control the rest of us. And it's compounded because the New York Times is essentially Pravda and the Washington Post is essentially Izvestia, and you have to see most of the media as the offensive wing of the left, not as a news media.
So on that point, so this is also big government socialism. Government runs the schools and government sets the curriculum, which is this crazy critical race theory and various other sex and gender identity type issues. Not the parents, right? Just the government. This is another government takeover. It's anti-school choice for sure.
Well, look, I'm going to testify on Wednesday at the Budget Committee in the House, where the Democrats, having already, I think, done amazing destruction to America's children, done an amazing amount to increase mental illness in America, totally failed to deal with the drug threat to all of us. Now they want to extend this and have the government take over basically all of the preschool learning in America, which is the opposite of what we should be doing. We should be encouraging families, communities, neighborhoods, to churches, synagogues, to organize themselves, to have a diversity of options, to have basically parental freedom, not to have control by some unionized bureaucrat.
And we're going to have Joni Ernst going to be on in a moment to talk about the catastrophe at the border, which was another failure. But you know, Newt, so here you've got this socialist dream, okay? And it would be one thing if it were working, but it's not working. It's utterly failing. That's the amazing thing. Now, the country is rebelling against it, according to the polls, but the Bidens don't seem to know that it's failing and that the administration is imploding. That's the part I find, I don't know, strange, bizarre, whatever.
Well, look, from their standpoint, they can't afford to deal with reality because reality cuts across every single thing that they believe in. That's why I wrote Defeating Big Government Socialism, because it hit me one day. You know, Ronald Reagan once said, it wasn't that what liberals did not know that scared him, it's what they knew that wasn't true. And I think what you're dealing with are people who are so fixated, it's a semi-religious belief system. They're so fixated on what they already know that they can't afford to be pragmatic in the classic American sense. They can't afford to look at the facts. They can't afford to ask questions about what works and what doesn't work, because their alliances require them to find ways to take more of your money to pay off their allies, even if it increases inflation and even if it means a terrible delivery of bad goods and services.
And the other point you're making, it's not enough to win the House and/or the Senate. We have to win the battle of ideas. We have to win the argument, as Margaret Thatcher used to say, which I think is so totally important, Newt.
Look, I think the fact is, at 9% inflation, double the price of gasoline since Donald Trump left, rising costs of food, murderers being released on the streets, we're probably going to win the House and Senate. The question is, what lesson will the country have learned? If all the country learns is that these guys are incompetent, we haven't won much. But if the country comes to realize, with the right campaign over the next 4 months, that it's their ideas that are wrong, it's their policies that are wrong. This is what Margaret Thatcher did to socialism in Great Britain. She destroyed it as an alternative, and no left-wing labor leader has been prime minister in 40 years. We have a chance right now to drive home that it's not just personality, it is the fundamental beliefs and the fundamental policies which are really crippling America and causing pain to virtually every American.
Last 20 seconds, Newt. Can big government socialism be defeated by my beloved free market capitalism? That's what I want to know. What's your forecast?
Well, absolutely. First of all, big government socialism loses 59-16 to free market capitalism. Second, I'm a Lincoln Republican. I believe in government of the people,
yes,
by the people, and for the people. And the people are going to throw these particular rascals out.
Newt Gingrich, terrific stuff. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. Best to Ambassador Kudlow.